Airplanes today are essential for travel and transport and have a wide variety of uses. In the 1900s, the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur, pioneered a huge amount of the research and experimentation used today for air travel and exploration. The first powered manned heavier-than-air flight by Wilbur and Orville Wright in 1903 was one of the most influential and impactful turning points in history, revolutionizing transport and travel by adding a whole new dimension and method of moving people and objects. It unlocked many possibilities for transport, commercial flight, and communication, and opened many opportunities for wars, exploration, and space travel and further research in aviation. Wilbur and Orville Wright were born 1867 and 1871 near Indiana and Ohio. They spent a lot of time together as children. The Wright brothers got their mechanical skills from their mother, Susan Corner. She had many different building and mechanical skills that helped to do many different things around the house. The Wright brothers' father, Milton Wright, was a preacher for the Church of the United Brethren in Christ. The Wright brothers were huge bicycle enthusiasts, and their bicycle business in 1893 played a big part in their enthusiasm with flight. They opened a bicycle shop called the Wright Cycle Exchange, and they carried some of the best bicycles on the market. They made many innovations, and their bicycle business ended up being very successful. The Wright brothers took lots of interest from people who did research on topics such as flight before them. One of these people was a person named Otto Lilienthal, a glider enthusiast, and the Wright brothers gained lots of their interest in flight after his death in 1896. In 1901, Wilbur Wright wrote that my own active interest in aeronautical problems dates back to the death of Lilienthal in 1896. The brief notice of his death, which appeared in the telegraphic news at that time, aroused a passive interest which had existed from my childhood. Wright brothers discovered a scientist named Octave Chanute, who was a retired engineer. He'd experimented with gliders, and his most successful glider was a biplane. The brothers wrote to Chanute about their experiments, and Chanute responded and offered encouragement. He was a big help to Wilbur and Orville in their early experiments. Wilbur and Orville did lots of experimentation and made many discoveries in flight. Even though they had many failures, by continually persevering and learning from every crash, they were able to do many things. The brothers continued to improve their airplanes for a long time, and they made their planes safer, more stable, and more practical with every new design. Wilbur had observed many birds in flight and found that one of the tips of their wings curved up and one of the tips curved down. However, how could they replicate this in a flying machine? One day, Wilbur sold an inner tube to a customer and began absent-mindedly twisting the box with both hands. He just so happened to twist the box so that one of the tips turned up and one of the tips turned down, just like he'd observed. He later realized that with a set of cables, he could replicate this in a flyer. They called this system wing warping. This is a sketch from Wilbur showing one of their kites. On this kite, wing warping was controlled from the ground using a set of cables. To perform experiments and tests, the brothers needed a place with open spaces and strong winds. It also had to have good weather conditions. Wilbur sent a letter to the U.S. Weather Bureau, and they suggested a place, Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. They recommended a place called Kill Devil Hills nearby that had tall sand dunes. The residents also provided encouragement and support to the brothers. Wilbur and Orville decided that this would be a good place to conduct their tests. While experimenting with early designs of gliders from 1900 to 1901, the brothers noticed that their gliders were not producing nearly as much lift as predicted. They were using Otto Lilienthal's tables of air pressure on curved surfaces along with other data to create their wings, and they suspected that these tables were inaccurate as the wings did not produce the lift that the tables said they would. This would, maybe, explain why they and others failed. Maybe they're using incorrect information. After realizing this, the brothers started doing many tests, such as cutting pieces of metal into various small wing shapes and attaching the shapes onto a bicycle. These tests further proved that Lilienthal's tables were wrong. Afterwards, they set up a small wind tunnel in their bicycle shop. They tested more than 200 types of wings and created more than 50 model wings. When they finished, they had a very accurate and complete table. This is a picture of the Wright 1902 glider. The brothers used the data from their tests to design a new wing shape and made many other improvements to their glider, such as a rudder. This glider solved many of their previous problems and had control over pitch, roll, and yaw. After this, the brothers started working on a way to propel and power the aircraft. The brothers, with lots of help from Charlie Taylor, who worked at their bicycle shop, created their own lightweight, efficient motor for the flyer. It used aluminum to keep the engine lightweight. The motors powered the propellers in the flyer, which pushed the plane forward. Samuel Pierpont Point Langley, the secretary of the Smithsonian, was one of the Wright brothers' greatest competitors in aviation. He was also the only one with government funding. His attempt in December 8, 1903, right before the Wrights' historical flight, was a complete failure. That attempt was his last chance, as he had run out of funds. Many people made fun of him and humiliated him in newspapers and in Congress. While the brothers were focused on balance and control, Langley was more focused on power and shooting the plane to the sky. Thus, the motor was excellent and the plane had lots of power. However, the plane was very structurally weak and its wings were also shaped wrong. He blamed the crashes on the launch mechanism, which was partially correct, but the crash was also partially caused. Just 9 days later, on December 17, 1903, at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, the brothers achieved a historical flight. The flight lasted for around 12 seconds and traveled around 120 feet. It was the first man-controlled flight that had flown under its own power in the world. The best flight of the day lasted 59 seconds and covered 852 feet. This was an entry from Wilbur Wright's diary on December 17, 1903. After running the engine and propellers a few minutes to get them in working order, I got on the machine at 10:35 for the first trial. The wind, according to anemometers at the time, was blowing a little over 20 miles, corrected 27 miles, according to the government manometer at Kitty Hawk. Time about 12 seconds, not known exactly as the watch was not properly stopped. After the brothers completed their historical flight, they sent a telegram to their father, which wrote about some of the details of the flight. As the press picked up a few facts from the telegram, many false stories and untrue information were published, many of which had wrong descriptions. As more people heard these rumors, more false information was added. In 1904, Wilbur tried to correct some of the errors in the stories. He also allowed an octave change to spread the word, as many people had no clue what the Wrights were doing. Over the years, Orville and Wilbur made much more designs of planes. One of these models is the Wright Flyer 3 of 1905, which was ultimately the first safe, practical, and useful airplane. It had a great control, being able to do sharp turns easily, and could fly long distances and land safely. With this plane, Wilbur made a flight lasting 39 minutes, which, for the first time, ran the gasoline tank dry. The Wrights tried to patent the basis of controlling their flyers, the wing warping system, on March 23, 1903. However, since the patent office had already received so many fake applications, the office did not trust the brothers' application. The brothers were planning to try and sell their planes, but they did not want to reveal any information about how it worked for fear of others stealing their ideas before they received the patent. However, buyers became skeptical of the legitimacy of their planes, as they did not want to demonstrate flights or reveal details about their airplanes. On May 23, 1906, the government finally awarded them a patent for a flying machine, United States Patent Number 821393. It covered most of the elements of the Wright control system. In the U.S., many people did not believe that the Wright brothers could fly. They had trouble trying to find sales or make deals with people, companies, or the government. They first tried to sell their planes to the U.S. Army, but they said they were not interested. Nobody believed that they could fly. Thus, they traveled to Europe in 1908 and 1909 to try and get more recognition from the public and sell their planes. They made many public flights in France and found much more popularity in the public and the press. Their sister, Catherine, also became very popular as their publicist. They became very famous in France as well as the U.S. and made many deals and contracts both in the U.S. and in Europe. On April 1912, Wilbur was diagnosed with typhoid, and he sadly died on May 30th, 45 years old. After Wilbur died, Orville took many of his positions and responsibilities, such as president of the Wright Company. However, unlike Wilbur, Orville was more shy and withdrawn. He felt uncomfortable with these positions and did not like doing things such as speeches or public flights. On January 30th, 1948, Orville passed away after a heart attack. After Orville's death, a huge public funeral was held on February 2nd in Dayton, Ohio. The Library of Congress took all the Wright brothers' notes, letters, and photographs. Orville's will requested that the 1903 airplane was sent to the Smithsonian, which it was. These advancements in aeronautics made a huge impact on transport and travel and led to many more advancements in flying and even space travel. Their accomplishments led to many more discoveries and breakthroughs in aviation and revolutionized transport and travel. The first successful powered flight by Wilbur and Orville was one of the most influential turning points in history, as it unlocked many opportunities and paved the way for lots of further advancements and research in aviation.